Deborah Donkey and the First Christmas. We would like to tell you the story of a donkey called Deborah, Debs to her friends. She lived a long time ago in a place called Nazareth in northern Israel. You may have already heard about her son Daniel and his incredible meeting with a man called Jesus. Well, this is how the story started.
Debs was a loyal, hard-working donkey who had spent all her life working for a local farmer in Nazareth. The work was hard, but he was a kind man who treated his animals well. She would have probably worked for him for the rest of her life if it wasn't for the Romans, who had arrived and conquered Israel about 60 years earlier.
The Romans took a lot of money from the people of Israel and used it to pay the wages of this strong army and to send back to their leaders in Rome. As if that wasn't bad enough, the Roman governor now decided he wanted to raise even more taxes. To help him do this, he needed a record of exactly who lived in Israel and where they were from. He decided everyone had to travel back to the area of their family home and register there.
Now that changed everything. Suddenly, everyone wanted a donkey to help them on their travels, and Deb's owner decided he could get a good price for his older donkeys. He agreed to sell 3 of them, and that included poor Deborah.
The first house they went to was the home of the local tax collector. Debs was pleased she wasn't chosen. I don't want to be rude, but he wasn't a small man, and his money bags were so heavy.
Next, they went to a merchant's house, and his wife came out. Now, she would be no problem to carry, but you should have seen how many bags of clothes that poor donkey was loaded up with. Debs heard the woman say something about, "Well, you never know what the weather will be like down south." So again, she was glad the other donkey had been chosen. On the way to the house of Joseph, the local carpenter, she heard her master talking about Debs being just the right donkey to carry Joseph's wife Mary to Bethlehem. It would be a long journey, but carrying Mary should be no problem. Then out of the house she came. Whoa! Nobody said she was having a baby. Debs thought to herself, I will have to work really hard now. I will be carrying 2, not 1.
So off they set on the long journey to Bethlehem. Joseph was so caring and kind, checking all the time how Mary was feeling and asking if she needed to stop for a rest. Debs was very careful too. She walked slowly and avoided any loose stones or bumps in the track to make the journey as comfortable as possible.
Eventually they arrived at Bethlehem, just in time too, as Mary had started to complain about pains and the baby being ready to be born. Now we just needed to find somewhere to stay for the night. Well, that was easier said than done. The place was so busy, with people everywhere and no rooms left anywhere.
Finally, the innkeeper took some pity on Mary and Joseph and offered them the use of the stable where the animals were kept. Debs wasn't sure why nobody could offer they a room instead. Why nobody could find room for Mary and her baby. That was a long and hard night. Joseph tried to clean things up as best as he could. He found some clean straw for Mary to lie on and then found an old feeding trough that he filled with the best of the straw to be ready as a crib for the baby.
Debs felt sorry for this young mother, delivering her first baby in such poor surroundings. Not the best start to a child's life, or so she thought. She drifted off to sleep after her hard journey from Nazareth, but was awakened in the middle of the night to a baby's cries. She was so pleased that all had turned out well. Joseph had a name ready for the baby boy. He was called Jesus. An angel had visited Joseph about 9 months ago and told him to give the baby this name. The baby was God's son, and he would come to save his people from their sins. Then, in the distance, she could hear something else. Donkeys have incredible hearing, something to do with their big ears, but don't tell them I said that. She could hear the most beautiful singing she had ever heard, and the sky seemed to be glowing over the hills around Bethlehem. Shortly after, she was awakened again. Can't the donkey get any sleep around here? She muttered to herself. She opened her eyes, and the stable was full of shepherds who had come to see the newborn baby Jesus. When Joseph asked them how they knew, they said the angels had told them. So that was the singing I heard, thought Debs.
Mary and Joseph were so pleased they had someone to share this moment with, as they were so far away from their family and friends. The shepherds were just so amazed and grateful that God had chosen to tell them about his son's birth. They told Mary and Joseph everything that had happened and all they had been told. They were so full of joy. On their way back to their sheep, they went through all the streets of Bethlehem, telling anybody and everybody that Jesus had been born.
I would like to say all was calm and peaceful for the next few years, but we ended up travelling to Egypt to flee from terrible King Herod. But as we say in the stable, that is a story for another day. As Debs finally drifted off to sleep after her long journey and the incredible night, she couldn't help thinking, I wonder what will happen with this family. I wonder how Jesus will save his people from their sins.
As she closed her eyes, the sun was just starting to creep over the mountains to start another day. Two of the stable beams were lighted up, and their shadow formed a shape of a cross as it moved over the feeding trough where baby Jesus lay.